The floating palace of the alien empire gleamed like a shard of sunlight trapped in glass. It hovered above a vast battlefield, though no one fought there today. From this height, the city below seemed tiny, its twisting towers and neon rivers shrinking into patterns that made Ilia's Trent feel small and insignificant. The human soldier had walked into this place with his head held high, but now, standing among towering alien lords and the guards of the Queen, he felt every inch the outsider. He adjusted the edges of his armor, a lightweight alloy designed to withstand extreme pressure and impacts. To the aliens, it looked fragile, laughably so. Ilias could feel the curious stares on him, weighing him, measuring him, as though they could see the weakness they assumed was in every human. He ignored them. Humans had always been underestimated, and he had learned long ago that being underestimated was often an advantage. The doors of the great hall opened with a soft hum, and a hush fell over the crowd. The Queen entered. She was unlike anything Ilias had ever seen. Her armor shimmered with a strange metallic sheen that seemed alive, moving subtly as she walked. Her height alone made Ilias swallow hard. She did not need to move fast. Her presence alone demanded attention. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, swept over the assembly like twin blades, settling finally on him. Ilias met her gaze and did not flinch. "You must be the human soldier," her voice echoed, soft but cutting, carrying easily across the hall. "So small, so fragile, yet bold enough to stand here in my court. Do you not know your kind is weak, easily broken, easily forgotten?" He had trained for moments like this, though nothing in his life had prepared him for the sheer force of alien scorn. "I am Captain Ilias Trent," he said evenly. "I am here as my people's representative. My presence is not for mockery, but for diplomacy. I could crush your armor with a flick of my wrist." He did not speak again immediately. Instead, he observed. Humans were small and soft by alien standards, yes, but they were clever, resilient, and adaptable. These qualities had carried them through impossible wars, harsh planets, and countless near extinctions. He had learned to trust in these strengths, and today in this hall he would prove them. The Queen stepped closer, her armor clinking lightly. Every movement seemed precise, controlled, almost ceremonial. "You look ready for battle, human. Tell me, do you think your little metal suit can save you if I strike?" And yet he knew something stronger than armor would be needed here. He would have to rely on his wits, his reflexes, and his human ingenuity. "I do not rely on my armor alone," he replied calmly. "I rely on my mind, my training, and my people's lessons. That is far stronger than metal." "We shall see if poetry can defeat steel," she motioned, and the hall's doors swung open to reveal a large arena. The floor gleamed like polished obsidian, marked with intricate patterns that hinted at ceremonial significance. Ilias followed her, his armor glinting in the light. The crowd parted, giving space for the duel that everyone assumed would be short. Aliens of all shapes and sizes lined the arena, their expressions a mix of amusement and curiosity. Ilias felt their eyes, the weight of expectation and ridicule pressing against him. He did not flinch. He never had. As they faced each other, the Queen raised her arms, and the energy of the hall seemed to shift. She moved with precision, every motion calculated to intimidate. Her strikes, when she began, were measured, not brutal at first, almost a test. Ilias dodged, rolling with the movements, observing patterns in her style. She was strong, yes, but predictable in her technique. Even the best warrior has limits, he thought, and a human mind can find them. The Queen laughed again, clearly expecting him to falter. "See, you are slow. Human reflexes cannot hope to match mine. Your kind is fragile in every way." Humans survived by noticing details that others overlooked. Time passed, or maybe it was only moments, but the tension in the arena thickened. Aliens whispered among themselves, surprised at his ability to evade, to anticipate. Some human delegates dared to hope. They had come here expecting embarrassment, but now there was possibility. Ilias felt it too, the raw, powerful possibility of proving his species' worth. "You are bold, human," the Queen said, her voice tinged with curiosity now rather than pure mockery. "But boldness is not enough." He studied the arena quickly, noting columns, ledges, and narrow passages. The fight was not just with the Queen, it was with the space itself. Using the environment could turn her strength into a disadvantage. Then slowly, deliberately, he began to remove his armor piece by piece. The crowd gasped. To aliens, armor was protection, status, and power. To see a human willingly shed it in the face of a superior opponent was shocking. He began with his helmet, then the chest plate, then the gauntlets. With every piece removed, he revealed not weakness but agility, a lean form built for movement, endurance, and speed. The queen paused, clearly taken aback. Aliens murmured. What human had the courage, or the madness, to fight without armor against one of the greatest warriors in the galaxy? Elias did not rush. He moved with calm purpose. His eyes never left hers, and in them burned a quiet certainty. "You rely too much on metal," he said softly, almost to himself. "Strength is not just in what you wear." She had expected fear, hesitation, or even a flinch. Instead, she saw confidence, skill, and quiet power. Elias' body moved lightly, his steps precise, each motion deliberate. He was human, yes, but in that moment he was also something more, a force of adaptability, courage, and intelligence. The arena seemed to hold its breath. Even the guards and attendants who were trained for battle sensed that something unusual was happening. The mockery had ended, something new had begun. Elias was no longer just a human soldier. He was a symbol, a statement that humans could be underestimated at their peril. The queen's eyes narrowed. She had faced countless warriors from dozens of worlds, yet none had dared what this human had. She had expected a brief performance, a display of alien superiority. Instead, she faced a challenger who might yet teach her a lesson she would not forget. And Elias, standing bare of armor, felt a surge of purpose. This duel was more than pride, it was proof. Proof that humans were clever, resilient, and unyielding. Proof that size and armor were not everything. Proof that courage, strategy, and intelligence could turn the smallest form into the deadliest opponent. The crowd watched, silent now, as the duel paused. The queen and the human stood in the arena, sizing each other up. The mocking tone was gone, replaced by tension and a spark of respect that neither would admit openly. The future of this encounter, of this human in an alien court, hung in the balance. For Elias, one thought remained clear. This was the moment he had prepared for all his life, not just to survive, but to show that humanity, underestimated and mocked, could rise to meet any challenge. The armor was gone, but the human soldier remained, and that was enough. And above all, he would prove that being human was never weakness, it was strength. The hall fell silent after Elias removed his armor. The murmur of the crowd had turned to stunned whispers. Aliens of every shape and size watched him carefully, their earlier amusement replaced by curiosity and confusion. Even the queen paused, her glowing eyes narrowing, trying to understand the strange confidence of a human who dared stand bare against her in the center of her palace. Elias knew the eyes of the galaxy were on him. Not just the ones in the hall, but the unseen watchers, the diplomats, the soldiers and leaders who would hear of this moment. Every move, every gesture mattered. A single misstep could shatter human dignity here, but a single clever action could earn respect not just for him, but for all of humanity. He stepped back from the center of the arena and began to walk toward a small balcony overlooking the training grounds. The palace was vast, with high ceilings and glimmering walls that reflected light like liquid metal. Elias could hear the soft hum of the energy shields outside the palace walls, the faint buzz of the city below. For a moment, he allowed himself to observe, to gather information. In any battle, knowledge was as vital as strength. The queen followed, her armor clinking lightly, though she moved with an elegance that made the sound almost musical. "You are bold, human," she said softly, though every word carried weight. "Bold or foolish, do you not fear what you have done? Standing bare in my court is dangerous." He was small, yes, fragile in appearance, but there was a fire in him, a quiet power that radiated without need of show. Her curiosity deepened, mingling with the irritation that someone so tiny could command attention simply by standing and breathing with confidence. She gestured to the arena. "You will fight here, a duel as is custom, but first you must prepare. You will have time to ready yourself, though do not think it will make much difference. No human has ever bested me. You are the first who dares try." Every opponent had weaknesses. His task was to find them, and he would. Humans had thrived for centuries not because they were the strongest, but because they adapted, learned, and overcame. He moved to a side chamber, a small room overlooking the arena. It was simple but sufficient. Here he could gather his thoughts, prepare his mind and body, and make calculations. His human senses, honed by years of survival and training, took in every detail. The dimensions of the arena, the placement of the audience, the height of the columns, the way the light reflected off polished surfaces. He even noted the queen's armor from his earlier observation, how it weighed her movements, how certain joints were limited, how the energy cores along her back glowed faintly, indicating vulnerability. He sat down on a low bench, closing his eyes briefly. The palace seemed alive with quiet energy. Soft hums from the walls, the distant chatter of attendants, and the ever-present gaze of the queen created an atmosphere of pressure, but Elias welcomed it. Pressure sharpened the mind. Pressure revealed truth. He visualized the duel, imagining every strike, every dodge, every counter. In his mind, he was already moving faster than any human body could go. He envisioned himself using the arena to his advantage, turning the queen's strength against her. A misstep here, a feint there, and her power would become a liability. Humans thrived not by brute force, but by ingenuity. He would prove that today. A soft knock at the door drew him from his thoughts. One of the human diplomats entered, a young officer named Maris. Her eyes widened when she saw him sitting without armor. "Captain, are you sure about this?" she asked quietly. "The queen, she's not just strong, she's terrifying." "That is what will give me the edge." He began a series of physical exercises, stretching and moving in ways that seemed effortless but were calculated to increase his speed and agility. Humans were not naturally as strong as many alien species, but they were endurance machines. He trained his body to last longer, to move smarter, to conserve energy for the moments that truly mattered. Hours passed, though he barely noticed. Time became irrelevant when the mind was focused, when every movement was rehearsed in thought and body. He practiced dodges, simulated attacks, imagined counters. He visualized the queen's strikes and how to turn them against her. Every pattern, every rhythm, every repetition in her movement could be exploited. Humans thrived by noticing the small things that others ignored. When he finally stopped, he was not tired. He was ready. His mind was sharp, his body primed. He had done everything he could. The rest would depend on instinct, courage, and the human ability to adapt in the moment. He walked back toward the arena. The doors opened, and the assembly looked up in renewed attention. The queen was already waiting, her stance regal, her eyes calculating. She had spent the time observing him as he had suspected. She had expected hesitation, perhaps fear, but none came. "You return," she said softly, a trace of curiosity in her tone. "You are calm, most would quake at this moment. Fear comes from misunderstanding them." The queen moved first, her strikes precise, fast, and powerful. Elias dodged, rolling and stepping aside with practiced ease. He did not attack immediately, he studied her as he moved. Each swing, each step, each gesture told a story. Patterns emerged. Repetition revealed itself. He noted a slight delay in her movements after a rapid strike, a tiny moment where she was vulnerable. The audience gasped as the small human moved with uncanny speed, evading blows that should have crushed him. Aliens whispered among themselves, eyes wide in disbelief. The queen's strikes were devastating, but she could not land a hit. Every dodge was calculated, every movement precise, every breath controlled. "You are clever," the queen said, finally acknowledging his skill. Her tone was not mockery, but curiosity. "Cleverness alone will not save you forever. You are human, fragile." Every movement tested her patience, her endurance, and her focus. Humans thrived on unpredictability, and Elias embodied that principle perfectly. The queen struck harder, faster, but Elias anticipated each blow. The crowd was silent now, every eye fixed on the dance of human and alien. It was not just a duel, it was a demonstration of what humanity could achieve when underestimated. Elias paused briefly, letting the queen advance. Then, with a fluid motion, he stepped aside, using her momentum to push her slightly off balance. Not a strike, not a hit, but a subtle manipulation that revealed his control over the battle. The queen blinked, momentarily caught off guard. The human's mind raced, calculating the next steps. The duel was far from over, but already the rules had changed. He was no longer merely a human facing an alien queen. He was a strategist, a force to be reckoned with, a proof of what humans could do when courage met intelligence. The audience leaned forward, sensing the shift. The queen's confidence had been challenged, not by strength, but by wit, agility, and unyielding resolve. Every alien watching began to understand that underestimating humans could be dangerous. Elias took a deep breath. He had more to reveal, more to demonstrate. The duel was only beginning, and yet already the story of humanity's resilience was being written before the eyes of the galaxy. He was ready for whatever came next. Humans survived by adapting, by learning, by facing impossible odds with courage. That truth would guide him through the rest of this battle. And the queen, for the first time in her life, realized that the tiny human before her might not only survive, but change the way her empire saw humanity forever. The arena buzzed with tension, though the sound was not of voices but of anticipation. Every being in the hall leaned forward, eyes fixed on the human soldier who had so boldly stood bare before the alien queen. Elias Trent's heart was steady, his mind clear. Every movement of the queen, every step she took, every subtle shift of her weight had been noted. This was more than a duel. This was a demonstration of the human way, the way they survived against impossible odds. The queen circled him slowly, her armor glinting under the lights. Each step she took was precise, deliberate, yet heavy with power. She was built for dominance, and she expected to end the duel quickly. Yet Elias remained calm, moving lightly on the balls of his feet, his body coiled like a spring. He did not need armor to defend him. He needed focus, strategy, and timing. "You have courage, human," she said, her voice echoing across the arena. "But courage without strength is worthless. You will see soon enough." Her hand moved like a striking blade, a blur that would have shattered the bones of an ordinary human. Elias rolled aside at the last moment, feeling the rush of displaced air as her strike tore past. He pushed off the ground and moved to a nearby column, using it as cover. The audience gasped. He was moving without armor, yet not a single misstep betrayed weakness. The queen's strikes became faster, sharper, more aggressive. Each one was intended to test him, to force him into a mistake. Yet Elias adapted. Humans thrived in chaos. Where the queen relied on strength and precision, Elias relied on unpredictability. He shifted, ducked, and feinted, drawing her into movements that made her overextend. A powerful strike was blocked not by armor, but by anticipation. A feint caused her to stumble slightly, a small but significant opening. He began to use the arena itself. The polished floors, the columns, the ledges, all became tools. He bounced off walls to change direction, ducked behind columns to break her line of sight, and even used the energy conduits along the floor to gain small bursts of speed. The aliens watching whispered among themselves. None had expected a human to turn a battlefield into an ally so skillfully. "You are clever," the queen admitted, her voice edged with surprise. "But cleverness alone will not save you." He sidestepped, grabbed her wrist, and twisted, using her momentum against her. She stumbled slightly, a small misstep, but one that would have cost her victory in any normal duel. The audience was stunned into silence. The queen, the undefeated, had been bested in a moment by a human who weighed far less than her and wore no armor. You are not like the others," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "You are human, yet you move with a skill I did not expect." Elias dodged and blocked, always observing, always calculating. He noticed a slight delay in her reactions after a rapid series of attacks. He noticed the subtle way her armor shifted under strain. He noticed the way her eyes flickered at the corners, small hints of vulnerability in an otherwise flawless warrior. He began to exploit these patterns. A feint here, a quick sidestep there, and he drew her into positions where her strength became a liability. One miscalculated strike caused her to overbalance slightly, and Elias used the moment to close distance. He did not attack immediately. Instead, he circled, keeping her off balance, showing that human intelligence was as sharp a weapon as any blade. The audience began to cheer quietly, first in disbelief, then in admiration. A human, small and bare of armor, was holding his own against the greatest warrior of the alien empire. Some of the alien nobles whispered among themselves, realizing that they had underestimated humanity too long. The queen herself was growing frustrated. She had not faced an opponent like this before, an opponent who did not rely on raw power but on cunning, speed, and relentless adaptability. Elias took a deep breath and decided it was time to test the queen further. He moved toward a series of elevated platforms along the edge of the arena. With careful precision, he leapt onto one, then another, using the height to his advantage. The queen followed, her weight causing the platforms to groan under her, each movement slower than his. Humans were lighter, faster, and more adaptable in such terrain. Every step he took was calculated, every movement a message. Size and strength were not everything. "You are fast," the queen said, her tone acknowledging his skill now. "But speed alone cannot win." He was a blur, a demonstration of human adaptability in action. The queen swung, her movements strong but predictable, and Elias anticipated every strike, every motion. He realized that brute force alone would never beat the queen. He needed to turn her strength into a disadvantage. With careful observation, he noticed that when she overextended, she could not recover quickly. When she relied on her heavy strikes, her balance was less stable. These were small details, easily overlooked, but humans thrived on noticing them. Elias began to set a pattern. He baited the queen into striking repeatedly, each attack more powerful than the last. He dodged, sidestepped, and manipulated her movement, drawing her toward the center of the arena. He was not attacking, he was setting a trap. Every feint, every movement was calculated to make her overcommit, to reveal her limits. Finally, a decisive moment came. The queen swung with incredible force, aiming to end the duel in one strike. Ilias anticipated the strike perfectly. He sidestepped at the last moment, allowing her momentum to carry her slightly off balance. With a swift motion, he maneuvered behind her, controlling her movement without touching her aggressively. It was not brute force. It was precision, intelligence, and human ingenuity at its finest. The audience gasped. The queen, undefeated for centuries, had been caught in a position where a single mistake could have ended her dominance. She froze, eyes wide with realization. Ilias did not attack. He stepped back, allowing her to regain balance, demonstrating that humans were not only survivors but also honorable warriors. You are remarkable," the queen said, her voice tinged with both frustration and admiration. "I did not think any human could withstand me. We survive not because we are the strongest, but because we adapt, because we learn, because we refuse to give up." She had expected a fragile opponent, but she had found a warrior who could think, adapt, and survive under conditions that would crush almost any other species. Ilias could feel the shift. The queen's confidence had been challenged, and with it, the assumptions of everyone watching. Humanity, long underestimated across the galaxy, was beginning to earn recognition. Every movement he made reinforced the lesson. Courage, intelligence, and adaptability were as potent as any weapon. The queen struck again, faster and more precise than before. Ilias dodged and rolled, then countered with a feint, drawing her into an overextended position. He moved with the grace and precision of a human trained in survival, not just combat. Every action demonstrated the resilience and cleverness that had allowed humanity to endure and thrive for millennia. The audience was silent, fully captivated. No one had ever seen a human fight like this, not against an opponent so strong and skilled. Aliens whispered among themselves, and some human delegates dared to hope. Ilias Trent had become more than a soldier. He was a symbol. A symbol that humans, though small and underestimated, could face any challenge with courage, wit, and ingenuity. Ilias' eyes met the queen's again. She had expected fear, hesitation, and weakness. What she saw instead was mastery, confidence, and the embodiment of human spirit. She could not deny it any longer. The duel was no longer just a fight. It was a lesson. Humans might be small, but they were formidable in ways that defied expectation. And in that moment, Ilias knew he had already won, not through brute force, but by showing the true power of humanity, the ability to adapt, to survive, and to rise against impossible odds. Ilias Trent moved lightly across the arena, feeling the rhythm of the battle settle into his mind. Each movement of the queen, each subtle shift of her weight, had already been studied, anticipated, and used to his advantage. He no longer relied on armor, no longer needed brute force to survive. Instead, he relied on instinct, strategy, and the human ability to adapt to every situation. The crowd watched in stunned silence, realizing that this duel was no ordinary fight. It was a display of what humanity could achieve when underestimated. The queen's eyes narrowed, her expression unreadable. She had faced countless opponents across the galaxy, each one stronger or faster than the last, and yet none had forced her to rethink the way they fought. Ilias had done just that. He had taken her superior strength and turned it into a tool, forcing her to move differently, to question her own techniques. He had become not just a survivor but a teacher, showing that intelligence could surpass raw power. "You move differently," the queen said, her voice calm but edged with frustration. "Your style is unpredictable, almost chaotic, yet precise. How can you anticipate my strikes without armor?" Ilias dodged and rolled, leaping over a low ledge, using the arena itself as a weapon. Each movement was precise, each action a calculated response. The aliens watching could not believe their eyes. A human, small and bare of armor, was holding his own against the most powerful queen in their empire. Ilias saw an opportunity. The queen had relied on predictable patterns, and now he had identified a rhythm. She overcommitted when striking from above, leaving her balance slightly off. He would use this to gain the upper hand. With a sudden burst of speed, he closed the distance between them, moving like a shadow across the polished floor. He feinted to the left, drawing her arm, then pivoted, using her momentum to force her toward a central platform in the arena. The audience gasped. The queen had not expected the human to move so boldly, so quickly. He was not attacking aggressively, yet every step he took shifted the balance of the duel in his favor. He did not strike, he demonstrated control, mastery of both his own movements and hers. Humans, small and underestimated, had an advantage that aliens rarely considered: adaptability. "You are remarkable," the queen said, her voice quieter now, almost a whisper. "No human has ever fought like this. Humans survive by using everything they have: mind, body, strategy. That is how we endure." He was not reckless. Every dodge, every step, every feint was intentional. The crowd leaned forward. Even the most seasoned alien warriors in the hall whispered among themselves. Humans, they realized, were dangerous not because of brute force, but because of unpredictability, intelligence, and resilience. A small human they had thought fragile had turned the duel into a lesson about the dangers of underestimating his kind. Elias spotted another opportunity. A raised ledge along the arena wall could be used to change the dynamics of the fight. He leaped onto it, landing lightly, and waited. The queen approached, her movements measured. She had recognized that this human was not ordinary. She had expected hesitation, fear, or even weakness. She found none. Every step he took was confident, calculated, and controlled. "You rely too much on tricks," the queen said. "They will not save you forever." He moved with a grace that was almost impossible to follow with the eye. Humans, small and flexible, could use terrain and speed to compensate for lack of size. He knew this and executed it flawlessly. She struck again, faster and harder, but he had learned to anticipate her force, to redirect it, to survive without confrontation. Elias began to push the queen further. He used her strength against her, guiding her movement without direct attack. He feinted to the left, drew her into an overextended strike, and then shifted his own position to a higher platform. She struggled to adjust, her strikes becoming more cautious, less powerful. The human had taken control of the duel without landing a single damaging blow. The audience was in awe. Aliens whispered, exchanging glances of disbelief. Humans were underestimated across the galaxy, seen as weak and fragile. Yet here was one, small and unarmored, demonstrating skill, intelligence, and resilience that rivaled the greatest warrior in their empire. The lesson was clear: never underestimate a human. Elias paused briefly to catch his breath, though his body was far from tired. His movements had been deliberate, measured, conserving energy while testing the queen's limits. He studied her stance carefully, noticing fatigue in her balance and a slight delay in her reactions after rapid strikes. These small details were crucial. Humans thrived on noticing what others overlooked, and he intended to use every advantage. "You are cunning," the queen admitted, her voice low. "I did not expect you to endure this long." This time he used a platform to change his angle, forcing her to readjust her stance repeatedly. Each movement of hers became slightly less efficient, less controlled. His strategy was working. Humans were not the strongest, but they could outthink almost any opponent. Elias took a calculated risk. He leapt forward, aiming to put himself in a position where the queen would have to overextend to strike him. She lunged, and he sidestepped, guiding her momentum toward the center of the arena. Her strikes, once precise and powerful, began to lose rhythm. She was strong, but her strength now worked against her, controlled by the human who had mastered the flow of battle. The audience watched in stunned silence. The queen, undefeated for centuries, was struggling to keep pace with a human. Elias moved with calm precision, demonstrating that intelligence, strategy, and adaptability could triumph over raw power. Humans were underestimated because they were small, but their minds were formidable weapons. "You are human," the queen said, her voice quiet, almost reverent. "And yet you fight as if you are more than human." Every move was deliberate, guiding the queen into positions where her strength became less effective. She struck, powerful and precise, but he had already adapted to her patterns. Every feint, every dodge, every leap was intentional. The human had turned the duel into a lesson about adaptability, resilience, and intelligence. Finally, Elias saw the moment he had been waiting for. The queen made a powerful strike, overextending her arm slightly. He sidestepped, using her momentum to place her in a position where she could not strike effectively without exposing herself. He did not attack, he did not need to. The position itself demonstrated his control. You have mastered this duel," the queen said, her voice soft but edged with respect. "I cannot believe how well you adapt." The queen's expression softened, and for the first time she regarded the human not as a fragile soldier but as a warrior, a strategist, and a symbol of the strength of his species. The duel had shifted. What began as mockery had become a display of respect and understanding. Elias took a step back, breathing evenly. He had proven the point he needed to. Humans were not weak, small, or fragile. They were adaptable, intelligent, and resilient. And even without armor, even without brute strength, they could face the strongest beings in the galaxy and survive. The queen's eyes met his, and there was no trace of mockery now, only acknowledgement. She had expected a fragile opponent. She found a warrior who could think, adapt, and endure. The lesson had been learned. Humanity was not to be underestimated. And in that moment, Elias Trent realized something important. The duel was far from over, but the story had already shifted. Humans, long underestimated and overlooked, had shown their true strength, not in armor, not in brute force, but in intelligence, adaptability, and courage. He was ready for whatever came next. The queen had power, experience, and strength, but humans had something even more dangerous, the ability to think, to adapt, and to survive. And that, Elias knew, would always give them an edge, no matter the opponent. The air in the arena was electric, thick with anticipation. Every alien, every human delegate, and even the palace attendants had stopped moving, leaning forward as if the outcome of the duel could alter the fate of the galaxy itself. The queen stood poised, her armor glinting, but her eyes no longer carried mockery. Instead, they were sharp, calculating, and tinged with respect. She had underestimated humans, and she had learned the hard way. Elias Trent breathed evenly, feeling the rhythm of the battle in his veins. Every step he had taken, every dodge, every calculated feint had led to this moment. He had tested her, forced her to adapt, and shown that human intelligence, courage, and adaptability were as formidable as any alien strength. But now, the duel was about to enter its final stage. He had to finish this, not with arrogance, but with clarity and precision. He studied her movements carefully. The queen's strikes, while still powerful, had become slightly slower, more deliberate. The overconfidence of the beginning had vanished, replaced by caution. She was analyzing him now, trying to anticipate his next move. This was human nature too. Elias knew that understanding his opponent, observing patterns, and finding subtle openings was just as important as raw speed or strength. He circled her slowly, not attacking, allowing her to make the first move. She lunged, aiming a strike intended to end the duel immediately. Elias dodged, twisting in midair and landing lightly behind her. He used the momentum to guide her slightly off balance, a gentle nudge that required no strength but displayed his control. The queen paused, blinking in surprise, realizing that the human had not merely survived but had begun to dominate the flow of the battle. "You are more than I expected," she said, her voice quiet but full of weight. "You move with strategy, precision, and courage. You are not just a human soldier, you are a warrior." Elias had shown her something new. A small, unarmored human could outthink, outmaneuver, and endure, using intelligence and agility to match overwhelming power. She realized that this duel was no longer a simple test of skill, but a demonstration of the human spirit. With renewed focus, Elias pressed the advantage. He used the arena to his benefit, leaping onto elevated platforms, sliding along polished floors, and ducking behind columns to break her rhythm. The queen's strikes came faster, but he anticipated each one, using her own momentum to create openings. He did not strike aggressively. He did not need to. Every move he made demonstrated control, adaptability, and skill, gradually eroding her confidence in brute strength alone. The crowd watched in awe. Aliens whispered among themselves, some leaning closer, realizing that humanity was far more dangerous than they had ever believed. Humans, they thought, were small, fragile, and weak. Yet Elias Trent had turned those assumptions upside down, showing that courage, intelligence, and adaptability could overcome raw power. The queen struck again, this time aiming with precision, trying to test the limits of his endurance. Elias rolled aside, then moved to higher ground, landing lightly with perfect balance. He used the platforms to gain leverage, positioning himself so that her strikes required overextension. Every move she made now carried risk, and every step he took demonstrated that humans could exploit even the slightest flaw. "You are relentless," the queen admitted, her voice carrying a mixture of frustration and admiration. "I have not faced an opponent like you in centuries." She swung with all her strength, aiming to overwhelm him, but he anticipated the motion perfectly. He sidestepped, allowing her force to carry her slightly off balance, and in that moment he positioned himself to show that control could be more powerful than raw strength. The queen froze, recognizing the pattern. Elias had not attacked aggressively. He had not relied on brute force. Instead, he had demonstrated mastery over the flow of the duel, guiding her movements, exploiting her overextensions, and showing that intelligence and strategy were equally, if not more, important than strength. The audience erupted in whispers and quiet cheers. Humans had always been underestimated, but Elias Trent had proven that their spirit, resilience, and adaptability made them formidable opponents. The queen, undefeated for centuries, was facing a lesson in humility. Elias pressed further. He feinted to the left, drawing her into a swing that required her to overextend. He then moved behind her, guiding her toward the center of the arena. Her strikes became more cautious, each movement carefully measured. She realized that she was being led not through force but through strategy, and that thought unsettled her. Humans were small, yet they could dominate the flow of battle through intelligence and adaptability. "You are impressive," the queen said, her voice quieter now, edged with respect. "I underestimated humans." This time he spoke softly, not as a taunt, but as a declaration. "You do not need to strike to prove strength," he said. "Control, strategy, and understanding are stronger than any blow." Elias Trent had shown her that humans, though smaller and seemingly weaker, could use intelligence, adaptability, and strategy to match and even surpass her raw power. Elias took a deep breath and stepped forward. He did not strike aggressively. Instead, he positioned himself carefully, forcing her into a stance where her strength could no longer dominate. The queen recognized the lesson, her eyes widening with understanding. Humans were underestimated across the galaxy, yet here was one who had demonstrated the true power of his species: resilience, adaptability, and intelligence. The audience erupted. Cheers, whispers, and gasps filled the arena. Aliens leaned forward, realizing that humans were far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The queen, undefeated for centuries, stood still, acknowledging the human before her. Elias had not attacked with force, yet he had dominated the duel through strategy and skill. "You have changed my perception," the queen said softly. "I see now that strength alone is not enough. You have shown me the power of your species. Humans survive because we adapt, learn, and endure. Strength alone cannot win. Intelligence, courage, and determination are what make us formidable." Elias Trent had not only survived the duel, but had turned it into a testament to the strength of humanity. He stepped forward and extended a hand, not as a threat, but as a gesture of mutual respect. The queen paused, then took it, acknowledging the human's skill, intelligence, and courage. In that moment, the duel was no longer a test of strength, but a celebration of what humans could achieve when underestimated. The crowd erupted in applause, some alien, some human, all recognizing the significance of what had occurred. Elias Trent had proven that humans, though small and seemingly fragile, could face overwhelming power and emerge victorious through intelligence, adaptability, and courage. The queen stepped back, her voice calm and respectful. "You have earned my respect, human soldier. Your species is far stronger than I imagined. I will not forget this lesson." He had faced the greatest warrior of an alien empire and survived not through strength, but through human ingenuity, courage, and determination. The lesson was clear: never underestimate humanity. He turned to the crowd, seeing the admiration and respect in the eyes of humans and aliens alike. He realized that this moment would be remembered across the galaxy, a testament to the strength of human spirit. Elias Trent had proven what it meant to be human, to endure, adapt, and rise above expectations, no matter the odds. The duel had been won not through brute force, but through intelligence, strategy, and courage. Humanity, underestimated for so long, had finally shown its true power. The queen stepped forward and bowed slightly, acknowledging the human soldier before her. "You have taught me something invaluable," she said. "Humans are not weak. They are cunning, adaptable, and courageous. I will not forget this lesson. And humans will continue to thrive, because we adapt, we endure, and we never give up." As he left the arena, the crowd parted, whispers of respect and admiration following him. The queen watched, her expression thoughtful, realizing that humans were not just survivors. They were warriors, innovators, and a species to be reckoned with. Elias Trent had faced the impossible and emerged victorious. Not through strength alone, but through intelligence, courage, and the unyielding spirit of humanity. The galaxy had witnessed the truth. Humans, though small and underestimated, could rise to any challenge, adapt to any situation, and prove themselves formidable against the greatest of opponents. And in that moment, Elias Trent knew that the story of humanity's strength, resilience, and ingenuity would echo across the stars for generations to come.